a lot of changes ahead for Ottawa Fury FC heading into 2016. It started off with the announcement that Mark DeSantos would not be returning and there would be a move for him as he joined Sporting Kansas City as an assistant coach. That was known much prior to the end of the season, but the new man that comes in Paul Dalglish. And before we talk about his new tenure with the club and what will be expected of him, some big changes for the club include Tom Heineman signing with the Tampa Bay Rowdies as he was out of contract at the end of the season. And then perhaps some other big news was the transfer of Ryan Richter, Sinisa Ubi-Parapovic, and captain Richie Ryan as they move on. Can we capture, these changes as to, obviously you're looking at 4 key players from your starting 11, but not change for change's sake, change that was requested by these players, and in the cases of Ubi-Parapovic, Richter, and Ryan, and change that, in the reality of professional sports is something that we see perhaps all too often.
Well, I think that's the first key point, is that this is pro sports and this does happen, and it's the old adage that success makes everything more difficult and more expensive. And when you get to a final in any pro sport, win or lose, it's going to be harder to keep that core of players together, and that's why you see in hockey and football and in soccer that repeating as a champion or getting back to the final in consecutive years is so difficult and happens so rarely. On the other hand, last season there were a lot of changes, a lot of new faces brought in, and that was coming off an expansion season where you knew they were taking this big step forward and you were excited to find out who they were bringing in. This will be a little bit harder to swallow for Fury supporters. It is the captain moving on, it is the leading scorer. But that's something that happens. These players are going to get offers from other places, and they're going to want to see what's out there. And there's going to be some players who, seeing the coaching change, maybe saw that as an opportunity to kickstart the next chapter of their career. So yeah, it's going to be a difficult one for some people to swallow, and people are going to have to get used with the concept of seeing another kind of newer version of Fury out there in 2016. They are going to have a lot of their core back in goalkeeper Romeo Alpezer, defenders Mason Trafford, Colin Falvey, and Rafael Alves. So that they've got most of their powerhouse back line and goalkeeper back for next season. So there are positives to look forward to, finding out who the next captain in Fury history is going to be. But it was a tough announcement for a lot of people to take, and that's normal, and that's a good sign too, that people fell in love with this team and fell in love with some of the players, and it's tough to say goodbye to that.
It doesn't take away what they accomplished this year. We talked with Mark many times this year, many great quotes from him, a great guy. We know how solid he was and how persuasive he was to bring those guys in. Some guys would maybe could have gone somewhere else for more money, but they accepted to come here to Ottawa, probably mostly because of Mark. But what they accomplished this year, and when you look back at the history of the Fury, maybe 10, 15 years from now on, we're going to walk in the hallway here at TD Place, if it's still on, hopefully it is, and we're going to see the picture of the 2015 edition of the Fury, and I think that's going to go through ages, and that's going to be one of the most memorable edition of the team, like starting from the back, with Tom Heineman, the captain Richie Ryan. So it doesn't take away what they accomplished this year. It cannot take away those departures, but it's going to be hard to swallow, and it's going to be hard to bounce back next year for sure.
And on the last topic of change, and we mentioned this off the start of the segment, is head coach Paul Dalglish. And he comes into a very unique situation, because usually when you see a new head coach coming in, it's because the other one has been let go, whether it's
turmoil of something.
There's been a struggle in the team, some type of organizational change. But this was something where Mark DeSantos felt that there was another chapter needed in his career, and he's taking that with Sporting Kansas City. Mm-hmm. And now you bring in Paul Dalglish, who, the name is huge in soccer circles because of what his father has achieved as both a player and a manager at Liverpool. Paul has both a professional career that began in Europe. He brought that over here in Major League Soccer, had success with Houston, and then he's trying to make a name for himself here, away from his father's shadow as a head coach. He comes in here, a very unique situation, and he's got a lot of different moving parts, keeping guys here, transfers that he's made because requests have come from the players, and now finding other pieces to bring in here that are going to suit the model of play that he wants his team to play in 2016 to make sure that they ultimately get that last win on the last day of the season to win a championship.
Well, I mean, for starters, as you said, he's got the pedigree. He's got the experience. He's got the bloodlines. If that means a lot to, I know it does mean a lot to a lot of people. He might argue that he will argue that he's very much his own person. with all the respect due to Kenny Dalglish, who's accomplished so much. But as far as first impressions go, it was good. He came in and did his first press conference. He was, an affable guy. He's a guy that obviously has a vision that he's not shy about sharing. He admittedly is coming into an odd situation because, as you said, he's not coming into a team in turmoil. He's not coming into a team that had a disastrous season. He's going to have to field plenty of questions about comparing him to what Marc Dos Santos did here in 2 years, and he seems totally up to that challenge. And he's a guy that obviously is going to want to put his own fingerprints and his own mark on this team. But from what we've seen of him so far, he seems like a guy who's going to be visible. He's going to be accessible to people, and he's a guy that seems to really want to be here and is excited to get started, which he clearly already has.
Change mixed with promise for Ottawa Fury FC as we continue to recap the 2015 season and look ahead to 2016 here on OttawaFuryFC.com.